Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Straight, and I'm here from BigSkyFiberArts.com to chat with you about how you might choose fibers for your needle felted paintings. I love painting with wool, and I'm going to share my screen to show you a few paintings that I have done in the past so that you might think about how you might use the same techniques in your own paintings. So here's a grizzly bear that I did. I love to do large paintings, and I also enjoy framing them with wood from our local mill. Here's another grizzly bear and an elk. And here's a butterfly and a Western tanager that I did for a class. More bears, they're my favorite. But my paintings, as you can see, are actually very flat, just like a typical painting. Now and then I incorporate a few 3D elements that will stick out just a bit. For example, my rocks here are just a dash 3D. So to create paintings like this, I think about three factors when picking my fibers. I think about the staple length, which is basically the length of the fibers, and we'll talk about roving versus bat. Micron count, which refers to the thickness of the individual fibers. And color. Color, of course, is very important. You can think about painting with wool very much like using the wool as paint. You mix the color, the wool to achieve different colors, but it's not exactly like paint. So if I find a wool that's exactly the color I need, even if it doesn't have the right staple length or micron count, I'll often work to make it work. And I can give you a couple tips on how I do that. So the wool that I use most frequently is carded New Zealand bat. It's a short fiber, so the staple length is very short, and it comes in a lot of colors. We carry 96 colors, 23 of those colors we had dyed just for our shop in shades that we would use in animals. And so there's a lot of colors to pick from, which is really nice. But this is 27 micron, which I think is also nice for your paintings. I find that when my whole painting is done in a fiber that is 19 micron, so the fiber would be very fine, it would be thinner. I feel that my picture is not quite as flat as what I can achieve with this wool. So I like to do the bulk of my wool in wool that is higher micron count than the 19. The higher micron count also does show your needle holes a little bit less. Although, as I'll talk about in a minute, there are definitely advantages to using 19 micron wool at particular times. So the reason why the short fiber is nice is that it gives you a lot of control when you're felting it into something. So see how little the fibers are short here. So I have a lot of control when I'm putting it into a small space. I can make thin lines, I can fill in areas, I can blend it. And so that's a very nice quality. So in contrast, here's a piece of 19 micron merino comb top, meaning comb top, all the fibers are going in one direction. This would, people often say this is roving, but the fibers are very long. So they're like 5 inches long. And so you can imagine that dealing with fibers of this length is more challenging, but it's not impossible. So if you decide you like the color, you like the texture, you can rip it up into smaller pieces and then you can use it. I've seen many people do beautiful cat portrayals, for example, with this wool because it's nice and fluffy. It's also nice because the merino is quite straight. And so you might decide that it's helpful for certain things to be able to have a nice long piece. So like working to make trees and branches and whiskers and things like that, or hair. Sometimes you might find that you want that long staple length and it's super helpful. But just as if you're a beginner, know that working with pieces that are shorter is often easier if you're doing a real painterly style. Now, another kind of wool that I like is called bulky carded cordell. It comes in this roving, but unlike other cordell that you'll commonly see, this one is also fairly short fiber. Now you'll notice, so this one also has a higher micron count. If memory is correct, I think it's 27. So it's much like the batting I was just showing you. The fibers are a little crimpier for the cordell than the merino. You can see that there's a little more of a curve to them, but the length is still pretty short. And it comes in a wide array of colors, including natural colors, which can be helpful sometimes because this roving already has, you know, a blended look of different colors that would give your animal portraits a nice natural look if that's what you're going for. And so this roving can be very handy. Now, the other material that I often use is 19 micron merino bat. And when I use this, it's again, short fiber. So that's super helpful. The 19 means it's finer than the 27. It's thinner, but the fact that it's thinner gives me a little bit more control. So as an example, you can tear off a piece of this. It's nice and soft. The merino is a little straighter than the cordell. Anchor it and just kind of thread out and make a nice whisker, for example. Or the fact that you see how easily it goes into something that's nice and straight, right? So that's super helpful. If you're making an eye, for example, and you want nice detail, it's much easier to pull out a piece of this fine wool and make eyelashes or highlights in the eye, catch lights, with this nice, fine, straight, controllable wool. So I tend to use the 19 micron bat for my detailed work. I will also use, however, so the bulk of my projects, I'll use the short fiber, but sometimes when you're doing a nice big background, you want to have, or water, you might find that you want to use the merino a lot of times, or cordell roving. So this is a bat that I made with 19 micron merino, and I also tossed in a bit of silk tussa. So this is some silk tussa, which the silk reflects light while the wool absorbs light, so it helps you to have a little bit of shine in it. So this is something that I might use, for example, for water. So you would tear this off. You could just get roving too. You don't have to get an art bat if you don't want to. And I would just lay it out like this. And I kind of put the colors where I want and pick and choose from the bat where I want the, you know, to get the colors I want. And then I would felt it down like this. So you can use, there are not rules with this. You can use all kinds of wool, all kinds of fibers. But the point is to know why you're picking what you're picking, and just knowing those basic characteristics can help you make decisions that will be useful for you. So I find that sometimes I do really like the roving from my backgrounds or for water. I've also seen people do wonderful things with roving to make, for example, trees. So you can separate out a long piece and then continue to separate out the wool into branches and use that as the basis for a tree. So in that instance, the long stable length can be very helpful. There are other types of wool that you'll hear about. What you'll most commonly hear about is the cordell and the merino, but people also use wool. Actually, I don't know that you would say wool for this. This is yak down. And you can actually have yak top or yak down, but the fibers are quite short. They behave very much like a 19 micron merino. So this is a nice natural look that you might find you enjoy. It's very much like working with the 19 micron merino bat. The same thing could be said of camel. It's again, very fine, very soft. This is alpaca, and it's a little bit slicker than the wool that I work with. And it does have a long staple length, but sometimes it will be what I want. For example, I will often use it if a black alpaca, if I want to incorporate black fur into some of my animals, because it has a nice richness. And so often dyed black really doesn't show well in a painting. And so having a nice natural rich black, like a black alpaca, can be helpful. So those are just a few of the types of wool that are commonly used in painting. So I hope that that was a helpful introduction. There are many other wool types you can use, but don't hesitate to send me your questions if you have them. Please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you'd like to hear more from us. And thank you so much for listening.